You haven't talked a lot about healthcare on the debate stage.
Nope.
And I believe it's because a lot of the debate for the Democrats is around cost. And I think what you just said is that the cost-based debate doesn't make any sense because we have the money.
Well, I do want to dig into one thing, and this is controversial. But if you look at it, we're spending a ton of the money we're spending on the last 2 years of patient life. We're talking about, in some cases, like tens, hundreds of billions of dollars. So that I met with a guy named Dean Kamen. You were there for
part of it.
For part of it. So Dean told me this incredible story that really, and to me, encapsulates so much of what's going on in our system. So Dean Kamen is a freaking genius. He invented the Segway. Is probably the most famous invention, but more meaningfully, he invented portable dialysis and this machine that enables you to essentially get dialysis in your own home. And right now, most people have to go to a dialysis center. As you imagine, there are millions of diabetic Americans and people who need dialysis, and their quality of life in these dialysis centers is not great, not what you want it to be. You get hooked up. It's very debilitating. And so Dean has this machine that enables you to do dialysis at home, like improves your quality of life dramatically. And so you think, okay, people should be like doing cartwheels and like trying to do this, but they figured out that they don't make as much money if you're not in the center. Like the lost revenue is something like $100 billion nationwide. That would be lost because if you didn't have these very expensive, very miserable dialysis centers, then you'd be making less money.
Yeah.
And so the lobbyists have fought portable dialysis tooth and nail, even though the data is incredibly positive and the quality of life is much higher. But people are like, no, you need to go to the center. And if you go to the center, it's not exactly like a joy.
Right.
It's the opposite of a joy. So this is an example of how like the money is driving the practice instead of our health driving the practice or quality of life driving the practice. And then, as usual in America, the lobbyists have control. So the lobbyists are making it so that portable dialysis is not the standard, and instead it's like get carted to these inpatient dialysis centers. And by the way, it costs us an extra $100 billion a year, like approximately. So this is an example of something where it's like you look around and being like, how the heck are we spending, $4 trillion a year? It's like things like that. It's like there's a way to save us billions and improve outcomes and improve quality of life. It's like, nope, can't do it. So it's things like that where you have to kind of break the stranglehold.
Right.
So part of it is like if you look at how we can rationalize the $4 trillion that's being spent, that if you have things like, hey, like it looks like portable dialysis might save us $100 billion, but to dig into it, you'd have to take a hard look at the fact that we're spending hundreds of billions on extending patient lives by like the last 2 years. And in many cases, those last 2 years are not exactly high quality of life years. They're not like,
Right.
It's not like that person's like loving it,
Typically, yeah.
and of course, in some cases it's 100% what we should do, that like you can't just like, have someone expire if you can save their lives or extend their lives and whatnot. But there are other cases where it's possible that the patient, him or herself, is like, look, I'm in pain. This is not how I would prefer to spend my last couple of years.
Right.
And right now, the system actually is designed to try and like pour tons and tons of resources into that case, because the system does not care about that patient's preferences or the patient's health and well-being. The system just cares about trying to maximize revenue. And so if I'm an 89-year-old and you can make tons of money off of trying to keep me alive till I'm 91, then that's what you're going to do. If you came to me and said, hey, what would your preference be? Let's say I hypothetically was like, I'd rather spend like some time at home. And they'd say, hey, if you do that, you're probably going to die in like 3 months. And then I would be like, well, I'll accept that because I'm 89 and I'm like uncomfortable, like, with my illness or current condition or whatever it is. That if you have more Americans essentially be able to take greater degrees of control over how they'd want to spend that period of time, that's actually one of the major cost drivers in our healthcare system.
That's just the numbers.
Yeah, this is just the numbers.
Yeah.
And again, in some cases, of course, you want to spend every penny and try and extend that person's life because that's what they want, and like there could be a very positive outcome. And in other cases, if the patient is both like saying like, hey, that's not what I want, and the outcome may not be like a return to perfect health, then we should be having different types of exchanges and conversations instead of just saying, well, the system says let's plug them in and like, you know, put them in like an intensive care that costs, you know, like $1,000 a day, and then pass that bill to the public, because again, we all pay for it in our own ways. Like that, like these are not cost-free decisions.
Right.
And so if the patient says, you know, that they prefer a different course of action, like we should be able to like follow that patient's wishes.